Lionel Hawkins jolted awake as the car came to a stop, but disorientation clouded his mind. A moment ago he was at home, working. Now he was sedated, bound, gagged, and blindfolded in the trunk of a high-end vehicle. As he slowly regained his senses, his body trembled with fear. He was being taken somewhere far. But why? And why was he being left to die? The thought churned in his stomach. The trunk clicked open and Lionel was roughly yanked out and tossed onto the ground, his heart racing as he braced for a bullet. But it never came. Instead, he heard the laughter of two men, followed by a third voice that sent an icy shock through him. It was Cheryl, his wife, the woman he had loved for more than a decade. "Why don't we just end it here?" one of the men suggested. "No," Cheryl responded, her voice cold and calculated. "With the heat and the snakes, he'll die soon enough. We can leave no trace." "Exactly," another man added. "No one will find him here for years. By then it'll just be bones." Their laughter echoed around him. Cheryl moved closer, the scent of her perfume filling the air as she sat beside him. "Sorry it had to end like this, darling," she said, a hint of mockery in her tone. "But you knew it wouldn't last forever. And by the way," she continued, "Enrique's crew, they're better in bed than you ever were." The men roared with laughter while Lionel's heart sank. "Believe it or not, it's nothing personal," she said with a wry smile. "It's just business." "Oh, who am I kidding?" she added with a laugh. "It's personal." She stood up and snapped, "Untie his hands." The first man hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Cheryl said. "Leave his feet and blindfold alone." She sat down again, a bitter smile playing on her lips. "Now, be a good boy and count to 100 after we leave. Don't untie yourself or take off the blindfold until then. Understand?" Lionel nodded, though the gag made it impossible to speak. Cheryl stood once more and ordered the men, "Do it." He felt the zip ties on his wrist being cut. "You're lucky," one of the men whispered. "If it were up to me, I'd shoot you in the head and throw you to the fish." As his hands were freed, Lionel rubbed his sore wrists. The man returned to the car and he heard Cheryl's voice one last time. "Do as I say or I'll send the dogs after you," she warned. "I'd say it was nice, but that'd be a lie. So do everyone a favor and die already." "Good job," she laughed, then slammed the door. As the car drove away, Lionel sobbed, counting to 100 as she had ordered. When he was finished, he pulled off the blindfold and gag, squinting in the harsh sunlight. The desert stretched around him, a bleak reminder that he wouldn't last long out here. He unbound his legs, tore off his jacket, and fashioned his shirt into a makeshift head covering to protect against the burning heat. Squinting, he saw faint tire tracks. His only hope was to follow them as far as he could. As he staggered through the desert, he reflected on his life with Cheryl. They had met in law school, fell in love, married, and both joined a prestigious law firm. But Lionel, frustrated by the lack of fulfillment, had ventured out on his own, starting a small firm where he dedicated a portion of his time to pro bono work for those in need. Cheryl had supported him at first, but as time passed, her true nature surfaced. She wasn't interested in helping people. She was interested in wealth and status. While pretending to back his firm, she maneuvered behind his back, securing a lucrative position at one of the region's top firms. Her income soon surpassed his, and their financial lives became increasingly separate. She insisted on separate accounts, bought herself a new BMW while he kept driving an aging Toyota, and rarely let him drive her car. Her work required constant travel, and over the past 2 years she had barely been home. She missed their last 2 anniversaries and never made good on her promises to make it up to him. Lionel was left wondering how it had all gone so wrong. As their 10th anniversary approached, Lionel decided to do nothing, hoping Cheryl would notice. So far, she hadn't said a word. He suspected she was cheating. He'd seen the signs, but had no proof. He couldn't afford a private investigator, with all his money tied up in his business and household. On several occasions, he smelled men's cologne on her, and sensed something else, too. Their intimacy had plummeted in the past 2 years. Once, they'd made love often. But now, if he was lucky, it happened once or twice a month, and it felt mechanical, like she was just getting it over with. The last year had been especially bad, with Cheryl constantly traveling for work. Her firm had assigned her to a high-profile client who required her to travel across Latin America, Bogota, Lima, Mexico City, and more. Fluent in Spanish, thanks to her Costa Rican roots, she thrived in her new role. He knew little about this client, except that he was rich, influential, and demanding. Lionel had a gut feeling she was having an affair, but without concrete evidence, he had nothing to go on. Still, he bided his time, certain she'd slip up eventually. He'd taken steps to protect himself and his business from her, so all he could do now was wait. Then, he remembered the documents she'd asked him to notarize. She claimed they were related to import-export, but he was suspicious. Why couldn't her firm handle it? Why did she need his signature? She even offered him a large sum of money to get it done. His gut told him something wasn't right. Maybe her client was involved in something illegal. Was he smuggling tools or pills? At first, Lionel hesitated to contact the authorities, but his instincts told him to wait and gather more information. He regretted that decision. Cheryl didn't give him much to go on, brushing off his concerns. She said if he couldn't handle it, she'd find someone else. She mocked his request for more details, telling him to trust her. Then, one day, Lionel found a strange note tucked between the documents. A number, 350 inches, initials AC, a date, and what looked like GPS coordinates. Puzzled, he showed it to his colleague, Andy McGregor. Andy suggested it might point to an illegal tools delivery. No, Cheryl wouldn't be involved in something like that, Lionel replied, shaking his head. Are you sure? Andy asked. You said she wanted you to notarize incomplete forms. If I were you, I'd go to the ATF immediately. Lionel decided to talk to Cheryl first. Thanks, Andy. I'll figure it out. But Andy was right. That hesitation was a mistake. That night, Lionel barely had time to set his briefcase down when everything went dark. A sharp pain shot through his leg and he screamed. Looking down, he saw a rattlesnake coiled around his leg. Distracted by his thoughts, he hadn't heard it hiss. Damn it, he muttered, grabbing a stone to defend himself as the snake lunged again. His leg burned and he limped toward a Joshua tree, desperate for shade. He knew he needed medical help fast, but he had nothing. His watch, phone, and wedding ring were all taken when Cheryl had him hijacked. As the sun set, he realized he might not make it through the night. The darkness crept in, and for the first time in years, he prayed, God, please help me. It was evening, and as usual, my wife, Danny, and I were on the back porch with our 9-month-old son, William. I cherish these quiet moments, reflecting on the day and looking ahead. Danny, resting her head on my shoulder, smiled as I spoke to William in a playful, childlike voice. It's a good thing no one can hear you, Amos, she teased. You'd think you were having a second childhood. I laughed. He's just a kid. You've got to have fun with him. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. I handed William to Danny and went to answer it, surprised to see my grandfather Elijah standing at the door. Dressed like an old cowboy with a worn Stetson and a long coat, he looked just as he always did. Come in, Grandpa, I said. It's been a while. How are you? He gave me a warm hug. Beautiful. Just like a summer dragonfly, he grinned. Came by to visit my grandkids, both of you. We're out back enjoying the sunset, I said. Want a beer? Of course, he replied. Something to wash off the road dust. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and found him already on the porch, rocking William and making baby noises. The baby giggled. Grandpa took the beer from me, took a big gulp, and set it down. See, I said to Danny, I'm not the only one. She laughed. Grandpa looked confused. What's going on? He asked. Danny was teasing me about making baby noises, I said. He chuckled. I've been doing that long before you two were born. Then his expression softened. William here looks a lot like your great-great-great-grandfather Jedediah did at this age. You mean my ancestor from the war? I asked. He nodded. Yes, that's him. Same age when everything went wrong. Do you mean the war? I asked. Yep, he said. When the South fired on Fort Sumter and everything exploded, I joined a regiment in Indianapolis. We started as infantry, but later became cavalry. That was the last time your Grandma Lizzie and the kids saw me. Damn, I muttered. It was tough, he said quietly. We fought in places like Shiloh, Chickamauga, and Atlanta. Saw good men die on both sides. I noticed a tear in his eye, but he quickly wiped it away and focused back on William. I hope you never have to go through anything like that, son, he said softly. His face suddenly shifted, and he stood up. I need to go. Do you have a first aid kit for snake bites? Of course, I said. Anyone around here would be crazy not to. We've got a local doctor who still makes house calls. All right, get it ready and be ready to call him, Grandpa said. He left and returned shortly, carrying a man whose shirt was tied around his head. Grandpa laid him on the couch, elevating his injured leg. Danny handed me the first aid kit and called Dr. Thompson while we worked on the man. He was breathing, but clearly in bad shape. Moments later, Dr. Thompson arrived, an old, kind man who used to work at the local hospital. He assessed the situation quickly and pulled out syringes and antidotes. Looks like you made it just in time, he said. Keep him still, no food or water for now. If things get worse, call me and we can get him to the ER. If he starts vomiting or his face swells, call me immediately. I'll come by tomorrow to check on him." "Will he be okay?" I asked. Dr. Thompson nodded. "I think so. The bite looks worse than it is, but keep an eye on it. I've given him a tetanus shot and antidote. If he gets worse, I may need to administer Enroman 4. "Do you know if he has insurance?" I asked. "I have no idea," he replied. "I'll cover the expenses. Just send me the bill." "Thanks," I said. "By the way, what happened to him?" "They tossed him aside," Grandpa said. "Left him for dead." "Maybe you should call the sheriff," Dr. Thompson suggested. "The sheriff won't help here," Grandpa replied. "Don't worry, he's in good hands." Dr. Thompson shrugged. "All right, if you say so. Keep an eye on him tonight. See you in the morning." We thanked the doctor as he left, then sat down in the living room. "What's going on, Grandpa?" I asked. Lionel Hawkins, an attorney in Southern California, had been ambushed by his wife Cheryl and some of her associates. They took him to Death Valley and left him for dead. Despite being completely innocent, Lionel had somehow gotten caught up in something bigger, orchestrated by his wife, whose involvement in shady dealings was becoming clearer. Danny, my wife, was able to access a legal database to dig up information on Enrique Castillo, a wealthy Mexican businessman who seemed to be tied to Cheryl's activities. Cheryl, who had worked as a lawyer for Dewey and Cheatham, had been handling all of Castillo's legal matters in the U.S., traveling with him frequently to places like Mexico City, Bogota, and Caracas. In many photos with Castillo, she appeared more like his mistress than a professional. Grandpa suspected that Lionel had uncovered something dangerous, possibly connected to pills or tools, but he didn't realize the full extent of it. Lionel's wife had pushed him to sign documents he didn't understand, and when he refused, it seemed like that was when things turned for the worse. Grandpa thought Lionel had accidentally discovered something significant just before he was captured. The details were unclear, and Lionel's memory of the events was foggy, but Grandpa had a theory that Cheryl was trying to cover up whatever had been going on. In the meantime, Grandpa had been doing work of his own, usually handling simple tasks for people who never knew he was involved. But lately, things had become more intense and complex. He felt that people no longer cared about right or wrong, and that made the job harder. He admitted that in his day, problems were solved more directly, but now it felt like things had gotten far more complicated. While the search for answers continued, Grandpa had given me a rifle to practice with, a modified Winchester Model 1892. It worked smoothly, almost like something out of an old Western. The strange thing was, it never seemed to run out of ammunition. Grandpa chuckled when I mentioned it, explaining that it was a feature designed to be useful in a fight. If I took care of the rifle, it would take care of me. As we settled down after a long evening, Danny had gathered some key details about Cheryl and Castillo. It seemed like Cheryl's role in all of this was more than just a lawyer. She was deeply involved in her client's world, and it wasn't one of legality. The pieces were starting to fall into place, and the more we learned, the more dangerous the situation seemed to get. Grandfather handed me a printed photo of Cheryl and Enrique Castillo. Cheryl was stunning, with dark hair, doe eyes, and a figure highlighted by a revealing dress. Castillo, older and sophisticated in a tailored suit, seemed very close to her, and the chemistry between them was undeniable. "There's more," Grandfather continued. "Castillo owns large villas in Colombia and Mexico, and is under investigation by Mexican authorities for various serious charges, including pills, tools, and illegal human trade. But these investigations always seem to vanish. Recently, he's been heavily involved in politics in the Mexican state of Chihuahua, replacing mayors and bureaucrats with his loyalists." I asked what kind of political activity he was involved in, and Grandfather explained that Castillo was building a coalition to remove local leaders, much like wealthy Americans influence politicians. It seemed Castillo was gaining too much power, and people were starting to ask questions. When I asked if there was more to it, Grandfather wasn't sure. It was hard to tell from the available reports. He took the stack of papers from Danny and said he would look into it. "You two get some rest while I stay here with Lionel," he said. Danny kissed his forehead before heading upstairs. Grandfather was already absorbed in the papers. I said goodnight and went upstairs myself, knowing what he meant about needing quiet. The next morning, I woke to the smell of bacon and coffee. Danny was already up, and I joined her in the kitchen, giving her a quick hug and a kiss. "This smells amazing," I said, rubbing my face against her neck. She smiled, but warned me not to get in the way. After breakfast, I went into the living room where Lionel was now awake but still groggy. I asked how he was feeling, and he looked confused, asking who we were and how he ended up there. I reassured him he wasn't dead and introduced myself and the others. When Lionel saw Grandfather, he recognized him as the one who had found him in the desert. Grandfather explained that Lionel had called for help, and he'd answered. Lionel, still stunned, recalled praying in the desert, realizing now who had answered. I told him he was in Texas and asked if he wanted breakfast. He eagerly accepted, and Danny brought him a plate of bacon and eggs. Lionel devoured it hungrily as though he hadn't eaten in days. Afterward, we all ate in silence. Danny fed William and then placed him in his playpen. I asked Lionel what had happened, and he recalled putting his briefcase on the table at home, only to end up tied up in the trunk of a car. His wife had made it clear she wanted him dead. Why? Danny asked, horrified. Lionel explained that Cheryl had asked him to sign and pre-certify import-export documents for her client, something not even filled out or signed. Danny was shocked. Why couldn't she do it herself? I don't know, Lionel answered, shrugging. Your wife's a lawyer, right? Danny pressed. Yes, he confirmed. Then why couldn't she handle it? Danny asked, trying to make sense of it all. Lionel shook his head. He had asked Cheryl why, but she just brushed him off. He told her he wouldn't proceed without meeting her client and verifying the documents. I may not have much, but I have my integrity, he said. Danny, sensing something was wrong, remarked that it didn't make sense. She asked if Cheryl had offered him money. Lionel confirmed, saying she offered him a suitcase full of cash, around $10,000. But he refused. He wasn't about to get involved in anything shady. Danny asked about his relationship with Cheryl, and Lionel laughed bitterly. He hadn't seen her much in the past 3 months, with her being away on business in places like Mexico City and Bogota. Even when she was home, she was glued to her phone or computer. He suspected she was cheating on him and couldn't afford to hire a private investigator. What made you so sure? Danny pressed. Lionel recounted how she'd coldly told him to do humanity a favor and die, and one of her associates had insulted him. Cheryl admitted to sleeping with other men. Lionel might have been a pushover, but he wasn't blind. Danny then showed him a photo of Cheryl with a man. He confirmed it was her, and when asked if he knew the man, he said he didn't, but guessed he was one of her wealthy clients. Danny revealed that the man was Enrique Castillo, one of Mexico's richest businessmen. Lionel noted that Castillo's name, Enrique, meant powerful ruler, and his surname, Castillo, meant castle, suggesting he was likely a controlling person with an inflated sense of self-importance. Danny deduced that the documents Cheryl wanted Lionel to sign were related to Castillo. Am I right? She asked. Lionel nodded, acknowledging her guess. Grandpa, who had been quietly observing, spoke up about a note Lionel had found before he was captured. It had some numbers, initials, AC, and GPS coordinates. Lionel was shocked. How do you know about that? He asked. It's his hobby, I said. Grandpa reads faces. Grandpa explained he could tell a lot from someone's face. Just then, there was a knock at the door. It was Dr. Thompson who checked on Lionel's wound. After confirming his condition was improving, the doctor left without charging us. Afterward, we returned to discussing the note. Lionel explained that the note had numbers, initials, and GPS coordinates, which puzzled him. Grandpa didn't know what GPS meant, so I explained it was a system for tracking locations. Lionel confessed he had no idea what the coordinates referred to, though a friend suggested it might be connected to illegal tools. He couldn't believe Cheryl could be involved in something so illegal. Danny asked if he ever imagined his wife would cheat on him, drag him into illegal activities, or even hijacked him. Her voice grew sharp, filled with anger at the situation. Lionel shook his head, tears streaming down his face. I suspected she was cheating, but I never expected this, he replied. Do you really think it's too far-fetched to consider she's involved in something illegal, like the arms trade? Danny pressed. Lionel thought for a moment. No, when you put it that way, it doesn't seem far off, he admitted. I noticed Grandpa had closed his eyes and appeared to be communicating with someone, though I wasn't sure who. After a moment, he opened his eyes and looked at me. Son, turn on the TV and tune to channel 970. I grabbed the remote and switched on the TV, but the channel didn't exist on our service. Wondering what would happen, I hit record on the DVR. The screen displayed a luxury home veranda. Cheryl stepped out wearing a robe that revealed her without clothes body as she walked. She sat down, soon joined by a dark-skinned man in a robe. A servant brought them drinks, and they began talking. Grandpa, what are we watching? I asked. He raised a hand. I'll explain when it's over. The man spoke in Spanish, and subtitles appeared. He asked Cheryl if she'd taken care of her stupid husband. She replied, Yes, it wasn't hard. It's been a long time coming, and now his property will be mine once he's declared dead. The man, Enrique, asked if she ever loved him. Cheryl shook her head. At first, yes, but he didn't have the ambition I needed. She smiled. Now I have you. The conversation turned to their future plans, taking control of Chihuahua, then all of Mexico, and eventually expanding their influence. They talked about uniting people for a revolution and taking back land from the U.S., ending with a private moment of intimacy. Cheryl referred to herself as his queen. Lionel, disgusted, asked us to turn it off. The video cut out, and I looked at Grandpa, bewildered. What the hell was that? Where did that come from? I asked. Grandpa remained calm. I can't explain everything right now, but what you saw is real. I'm not the only one who does what I do. How it was done, I can't say. Danny was shocked. We just watched a video in real time of two people planning a revolution and then having closeness? Grandpa nodded. Yes, that's about the gist of it. He turned to Lionel. We need to hide you where they can't find you. Where? Lionel asked. I think I know a place, Grandpa replied. But first, take a bath. No offense, but you could use one. We all laughed, even William. I can't stand on this leg long, Lionel said. Danny quickly offered a solution. We have a shower seat. I'll get it for you, and Amos can find some clothes. I grabbed a shower seat and some clean clothes for Lionel, trying to make him as comfortable as possible for what lay ahead. Lionel had to use his own shoes and underwear, but I wasn't too worried about appearances. I set everything up in the downstairs bathroom and returned to help him get there. After settling him in, I sat down in the living room. Where are we taking him? I asked my grandfather. To a safe place like I did with you, he replied. He'll be all right there. Danny spoke up as I prepped the video for burning to a DVD. We need to get this footage to the authorities. What do we tell them? I asked. Danny frowned. That we saw a video of two people planning a revolution and having closeness. They'll lock us up in a mental hospital. You're right, I said. But Danny's right. Grandpa, I said, we have to do something. I know how you feel, he said calmly. Rescuing someone from death is one thing. Stopping a revolution is another. Let's get Lionel to safety first. Then we'll figure it out. I agreed and stepped away briefly to grab a backpack from my office. After about half an hour, Lionel returned to the living room, limping but cleaner. He looked odd in ill-fitting jeans and expensive, worn-out shoes, but at least he didn't stink anymore. Grandfather stood up as Lionel entered. Ready, son? I'm ready, Lionel nodded. Grandfather went outside and came back with a lasso. He did his usual trick, and within moments we were standing in a dusty street, similar to the one where I had once met my ex-wife and her lover. He pointed to a 2-story wooden building with a sign reading, Hotel. We helped Lionel up the stairs, and the inside of the building felt cool, like stepping into an Old West museum. A bald man with an armband emerged from the back room. Elijah, old friend, he greeted my grandfather. They exchanged pleasantries before Grandpa asked, Jake, can you shelter my friend for a while? He was bitten by a snake. Jake agreed to help, and even mentioned providing clothes and teaching Lionel how to use a tool. Grandfather looked at Jake. You're not starting a shootout here, are you? Jake raised an eyebrow. As long as you keep him from scratching like a cow against a fence. We turned to see Lionel trying to scratch his back on the doorframe. Grandfather asked, What's wrong with you? Sorry, Lionel replied. My back itches like crazy. I had him lift his shirt, revealing a large red spot on his lower back with a small formation at the center. That doesn't look like a bite, I said. I think they implanted a tracking chip in him. What? Grandpa asked, shocked. I confirmed. It's a tracking device. Remember what the man in the video said? They lost track of him a few hours after he was abandoned. Grandfather agreed. I thought they were watching him in the desert. I shook my head. No, they weren't. We need to get this out. Looks like an infection is starting. I grabbed a knife and alcohol from Jake. Grandfather gave Lionel a wooden stick to bite down on. Using the knife, I removed the chip from Lionel's back, cleaned the wound, and ensured he was stable for now. We examined the small black device in my handkerchief. It was about twice the size of a grain of rice with tiny wires sticking out. Grandfather asked, Is this a tracking device? I nodded. It seems so. They probably injected it after sedating him. I crushed the device under my boot, then asked Jake where Lionel's room was. He directed us down the hall, saying the toilet was outside. He also pointed us to a nearby place where Lionel could eat and bathe. Inside the room, Lionel was confused by the lack of modern amenities. "No TV? What's this for?" he asked, pointing to a large ceramic jug next to the nightstand. "That's a chamber pot," I explained. "It's for nighttime." Lionel looked pale. "That won't work," he said. We sat him down on the bed and I reassured him. I placed a backpack on the bed for Lionel. It's not much, but it should help pass the time while we're gone. I handed him an old tablet. It's loaded with 2 seasons of NCIS and a few movies. The battery's fully charged. I also packed some snacks, toilet paper, and a couple of magazines. "Thanks," Lionel said. "This will help." Grandfather pointed to a kerosene lamp on the nightstand. "What's that for?" he asked. "That's for light," Lionel replied. "Ever used one before?" Grandfather asked. "No," Lionel shook his head. Grandfather chuckled. "Let me show you." A few minutes later, Lionel had learned how to light it. "I can't believe people lived like this," he said, amazed. Grandfather grinned. "Believe it, we were glad to have it. How long do you think I'll be here?" Lionel asked. "I hope not long," I said. Grandfather agreed. "We'll help you as much as we can, but when the time comes, you'll have to take charge. Think you can handle it?" Lionel paused, then nodded slowly. "I think so." "Good. Listen to Jake and stay out of trouble," Grandfather said. "I promise." "Thank you both," Lionel replied. "Hang in there," I said, leaving the room. We met Jake in the hotel lobby and said our goodbyes. But just as we stepped outside, Grandfather's eyes widened. "We need to go now," he said urgently. We rushed outside and he threw his rope over us. In an instant, we were back in my living room. The front door was wide open. I called for Danny, but she wasn't there. William was gone too. "They took Danny and William," Grandfather said grimly. I felt my heart drop before fury took over. We spotted a note on the table with GPS coordinates and a time. The note read, "You know who we're looking for. Bring him to these coordinates at the specified time, and your wife and child will be released unharmed." "Can you find this place?" Grandfather asked. I nodded and turned on the computer. The location was about 200 miles south of the Mexican border, in Chihuahua. "They're heading south, about 200 miles to Chihuahua," I said. "We have less than 6 hours." Grandfather thought for a moment. "Are you planning to hand Lionel over?" I asked. "No," he replied. "They won't release Danny and William, even if we give them Lionel. Castillo thinks he's some Napoleon. It's time he met his Waterloo. I know the people who can make that happen." He grinned. "Get your tool and ready, Ringo. We're raiding tonight." After getting my Colt and saddling up Ringo, I returned to find Grandfather waiting. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded, then grabbed my badge from the mantel and pinned it to my shirt. He smiled. "Wouldn't go into battle without my assistant," he said, patting me on the shoulder. We mounted our horses and headed toward Hawk Gulch. As we reached the cliffs, a passage opened up, and we galloped through it, ending up on a grassy ridge. We soon encountered a group of men in dark blue uniforms. Grandfather dismounted and shook hands with a man who looked up at me. "This is my great-great-great-grandson, Amos Jones," Grandfather introduced. The man, Lieutenant Colonel Fielder A. Jones, shook my hand. "Nice to meet you," he said. "Maybe we're related," Grandfather chuckled. "Maybe, Colonel." "I invited some others to join us," Colonel Jones said. "Hope that's all right." "Not a problem," Grandfather replied. A man in a light blue-gray jacket approached. His thick beard and saber made him stand out. He removed his gloves and shook Grandfather's hand. "General Stewart," Grandfather said. "It's an honor, sir." "My honor, Sergeant," the general replied. He turned to me. "Who's this young man?" "This is my great-great-great-grandson, Amos," Grandfather said. "Amos, meet James Ewell Brown Stewart, one of the finest cavalry officers in the Confederate Army." "I've read a lot about you," I said. He smiled. "I hope some of it was good," he said. "Call me Jeb." "Yes, sir," I replied. Jeb turned to Colonel Jones. "So what's the plan, Colonel?" I watched Colonel Jones as he surveyed the camp below us. There was a helicopter parked on the southern edge, and he laid out the plan. "Eli and you, Amos, will make first contact," he said, pointing to the right side of the camp. 3 companies of the 8th will hit their left flank. I'll be in the center with 3 companies and artillery. I need you to take the right flank. They won't expect it. Eli will signal. Once he does, I'll order the artillery to distract them, and then we attack. Jeb asked about the southern approach. "The Mexican army is coming from the south," Colonel Jones replied. They'll likely run south once the battle starts. They're not regulars, Jones explained. Most of them are fresh recruits. No real training, no discipline. They're not a real fighting force. Jeb nodded, but I was still focused on the situation at hand. I couldn't shake the worry about my wife and son. Colonel, I said, my voice tight with concern, Danny and William are in that camp. I don't want them caught in the artillery fire. Grandpa reassured me, his voice calm. They'll be out before we strike. The artillery will land just south of the camp. These gunners are the best. They'll be fine. I still wasn't sure, but I nodded, trusting Grandpa's words. As we made our way back to our horses, Jeb turned to me. Colonel Jones never told me what this is all about, he said. Care to explain? I sighed, rubbing my forehead. Same old story. Magnums, power, money, and lawyers. But this time they took my wife and son. I'm going to get them back. Jeb gave me a determined look, shaking my hand. I'll do whatever it takes. I appreciated the support as we mounted our horses and rode off. The sound of a violin caught my ear, and I paused to listen. The men in gray jackets were singing a song, and I couldn't help but be drawn in. That's a catchy tune, I said to Grandpa. Raid, he replied with a smile. An old Confederate cavalry song. I raised an eyebrow. Did you sing that during the war? Grandpa's expression softened with nostalgia. Many times. We didn't have all the gadgets you have now. We made our own fun. The men sang louder. We are 3,000 horses, and not one is afraid. Something about the song gave me confidence. Are you ready, Grandpa? I asked. He grinned. I was born ready, Amos. His voice turned serious. Let's do this. We rode toward Castillo's camp, passing a line of cannons. Then we were stopped by a man holding a machine Colt. Stop, he ordered. Grandpa stayed calm. What do you need? We're here to see Enrique Castillo. He's expecting us. The man yelled back to someone behind him. I turned to Grandpa. What's he saying? He's calling for Castillo, Grandpa replied, unfazed. A few moments later, another man in a shiny uniform approached. He looked us over with a smug smile. Are you Castillo? Grandpa asked. The man stood tall and declared, Yes, I am Enrique Castillo, General of the Army of New Chihuahua and future Emperor of Latin America. He switched to English. Who are you? I'm Justice O'Peace, Grandpa said. This is my second in command, Amos Jones. We're here to take the woman and child you hijacked. After that, we'll take you with us. Enrique grinned. Well, we thought you'd come by helicopter. But horses, how did you get here so fast? And where's the man you were supposed to bring? Our horses are faster, I said, my tone firm. The man you're looking for is safe from you, but you'll see him soon, Grandpa added. Enrique's smile faltered. And what if I don't give up the woman and child? Grandpa's smile turned cold. Then I'll introduce you to my friends. Enrique's eyes widened as a line of dark blue uniforms appeared behind him, all mounted on horseback. The men around him were equally stunned. I glanced back and saw flames rising from the nostrils of some horses, men drawing their sabers. Who are these people? What kind of magic is this? Enrique's voice trembled. These are my friends, Grandpa said, his eyes flashing with intensity. Meet the 8th Indiana Cavalry, reinforced by Jeb Stuart's cavalry, veterans of countless battles. You wanted a war, didn't you? Well, I'm more than happy to deliver one. Just then, Cheryl, Lionel's wife, appeared. She went pale when she saw the ghostly cavalryman. She turned to the men around her. Where's my husband? She demanded. In a safe place, Grandpa replied. Now bring the woman and child. Enrique turned to her. Do it, he ordered. But Enrique, Cheryl started to protest. Do it, he barked. She turned to her men and gave them orders. A moment later, Danny was brought outside, with one of the men holding William and handing him to her. They stood before us. Are you okay? I asked, my voice full of concern. We're fine, she answered, her voice steady. They didn't hurt us. We just got here. Grandpa took out his rope and tossed it over. Danny, I whispered to her. I love you. She smiled softly. I love you too, she whispered back before disappearing from view. Enrique looked at me with a smirk. Oh, so you're the woman's husband, are you? He asked. Yes, I said, my voice steady. Well, it's a good thing you showed up when you did. My men might have thought she'd be useful for other things. Enrique laughed. Cheryl laughed along with him. Grandpa swung the rope again, wrapping it around Enrique and Cheryl. They froze, and I couldn't help but notice that Enrique had wet himself. I chuckled under my breath. What a general, I muttered. Grandpa yanked the rope, and they vanished in a cloud of smoke. He let out a sharp whistle, the loudest I'd ever heard. The ground trembled, and the cannons fired, sending shells over our heads that exploded just south of the camp. One shell hit a helicopter, bursting it into flames. A trumpet blared a charge to my right, and cries of rebellion rang out to my left. Two columns of cavalry charged the camp's flanks, sabers drawn. Moments later, I saw some of Castillo's men drop their tools and flee south, abandoning the fight. The enemy fire stopped, and a thick cloud of smoke hung over the ruined camp. The cavalrymen silently retreated, leaving only chaos in their wake. I looked over at Colonel Jones, who nodded and waved. I gave him a thumbs up. He smiled, saluted, and turned, disappearing into the haze. To my left, Jeb Stewart was on horseback. He returned the salute, and I waved back. Seconds later, he and his men vanished, leaving only the wreckage of Castillo's camp. Still processing the madness, I holstered my tool. I could barely comprehend what had just happened. I stood there, leaning on Ringo, trying to collect my thoughts. A strong hand landed on my shoulder, and I turned to find Grandpa watching me. "Are you all right, son?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah, I think so." "You did well, son," Grandpa said with pride. "Now, let's get out of here before the rest of the Mexican army shows up." "Sounds good," I replied. We mounted our horses and rode off, a familiar passage opening in front of us. Moments later, we were on a dusty road leading to a border town. We stopped at a hotel and tied our horses to the post. As soon as I walked in, Danny threw herself into my arms, showering me with kisses. I held her tightly, kissing her back. "Are you all right?" I asked. She nodded. I saw Jake bouncing little William on his lap. I knew he was okay. "What happened?" I asked, pulling her closer. "Shortly after you and Grandpa left, a helicopter landed outside. Armed men stormed the house looking for Lionel. They didn't believe me when I told them I didn't know anything. They took us both. That woman left you a note. We only got here about half an hour before you showed up." "Did they hurt you?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, but Castillo said if you didn't show up, he'd give me to his men." I didn't need to guess what they'd planned for her and William. I looked over at Lionel, sitting in a chair against the wall. "How's he doing?" I asked Danny. "He's better," she said. "He can walk a little now." Grandpa walked over. "He's going to jail with us." "Are you putting him in jail?" Danny asked. Grandpa shook his head. "No. Castillo and Cheryl are already there." "Ready to meet your wife, Lionel?" he asked. Lionel nodded and patted his colt. "Ready. Let's go," Grandpa said, and Lionel stood up. We turned to leave. "Wait," Danny called. "If you're going to meet them, I'm coming too. I have a score to settle with them." "I think you'd better stay here with William," Grandpa suggested. "No," Danny said firmly. "They hijacked my son and put him in danger. I can't let them get away with this." Grandpa knew better than to argue with her when she was set on something. He nodded and turned to Jake, who was playing with William. "Jake, would you mind looking after my grandson for a bit?" Grandpa asked. Jake smiled up from his seat. "My pleasure, Eli. I haven't held a baby in a while. He looks a lot like Jed, doesn't he?" "Yeah, looks like it," Grandpa said. "All right, let's go." We turned to leave, and with that, our next chapter began. On the way to the prison, I stopped and grabbed my Colt from its holster, feeling the weight of what was to come. We made our way to the cell where Enrique and Cheryl were sitting. Grandpa motioned for the sheriff to open the door. "Are you sure about this?" the sheriff asked. "Absolutely," Grandpa replied, his voice steady as the door creaked open. "Do you need me to stay?" the sheriff asked. "No, I'll take it from here," Grandpa said. "My deputy will cover me. Why don't you go get something to eat?" The sheriff nodded. "I won't refuse," he said, heading out. Grandpa turned to the prisoners. "Out," he ordered, gesturing for them to leave their seats. They exchanged looks before slowly standing. Cheryl and Enrique made it clear they weren't going to cooperate. Grandpa laughed, eyeing them. "You should know," he said, turning to Cheryl. "It's dangerous to come between a mother and her child." Then he turned to Castillo. "Well, General," he added sarcastically, "your little war is over." He looked at Lionel. "Anything you'd like to discuss with your wife?" Lionel pulled up a chair, staring at Cheryl. "Give me one good reason not to eliminate you right now," he said, his voice cold. Cheryl looked at him in shock. "Because I love you," she said quietly. Lionel let out a bitter laugh. "That's why you left me to die in the desert? That's why you tried to set me up and had an affair with that so-called dictator?" he sneered. "I'm glad you love me. I'd hate to think what you would have done if I didn't love you, lying witch." Enrique groaned in pain, struggling to speak. You told me you didn't love him anymore. You swore loyalty to me. I told you what I'd do if you betrayed me. He lunged toward her, but that was when the shot rang out. He fell to the floor, dead, and then vanished in a puff of smoke. Where did he go? Cheryl gasped. To his eternal resting place, Grandpa replied, his voice unbothered. Cheryl turned to Lionel, her voice trembling. You liquidated him. Maybe you'd have preferred I let him strangle you, Lionel said coldly. Now tell me, why did you do this? Why cheat on me with him? Why try to eliminate me? Because he was rich and powerful, she replied, looking down. He was a megalomaniac liar, just like you, Lionel said. So what now? She asked, her voice shaking. Are you going to eliminate me too? It's tempting, Lionel said, his tone dark. But I've got another idea. As Jake had shown him, Lionel glanced at Grandpa. Is there any way to escape from here? Grandpa frowned. Normally, no. Why? Do you know the myth of Prometheus? Lionel asked. Grandpa raised an eyebrow. I remember it from Greek mythology. Cheryl looked confused as Lionel began. Prometheus gave fire to man, and for that, Zeus chained him to a rock, sending an eagle to peck his liver every day. His liver grew back every night, and the cycle continued until Hercules liquidated the eagle. And what's this got to do with me? Cheryl asked. You left me to die in the desert, Lionel said. You told me to do humanity a favor and die. Her eyes widened in horror as Lionel turned to Grandpa. Do you think something like this could be arranged for her? Grandpa considered the idea, narrowing his eyes. You can't do this to me, Cheryl pleaded. Please, Lionel, divorce me if you must, but don't leave me. Shut up, witch, Lionel snapped. You know the courts would side with you in a divorce, but I won't give you that. I'll wait until you're officially declared dead. Cheryl recoiled at his words. I'll run away from here, she threatened. I'll find you and I'll make you pay. No, you won't, Grandpa said, his voice firm. He looked at Lionel. I understand what you're getting at. It's unconventional, but not impossible. Are you sure about this? Lionel met his gaze. I'm sure. I want her to feel the pain she caused me. Grandpa nodded. All right. In the blink of an eye, we were standing in the middle of the desert, next to a large rock. Sand and sparse bushes surrounded us. Cheryl was chained, without clothes, to the rock. Her limbs spread wide. Fear and horror filled her face as she realized where she was. Are you really going to leave me here? She screamed. I'll die here. You left me to die in the desert, Lionel replied coldly. But I loved you. This is your punishment. Grandpa added, You won't die here. You'll stay alive, chained to this rock until you're officially declared dead. Vultures will come, and wild animals too. You'll survive just enough to endure their visits, and you'll be completely alone. He turned to Cheryl and asked, Do you know the saying, an eye for an eye? Cheryl begged, her voice trembling. Please, don't do this. Give me another chance, Lionel. If he sees you've truly repented, he may grant you mercy, Grandpa said. Cheryl looked at Lionel, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry it ended like this, honey, Lionel said, repeating her own words. I'll find someone better in bed than you. Cheryl's sobs echoed as they turned away. In an instant, they were back at the hotel. Lionel looked stunned, and Danny and I exchanged uneasy glances. Do you think she'll ever feel true remorse? Lionel asked. It's possible, Grandpa said, his voice thoughtful. But not if she loses her mind first. I took the red stone ring from my pocket and handed it to Lionel. Watch this ring. When it starts flickering blue, that will mean she has truly repented. If you want to release her, press the stone. Lionel studied the ring before slipping it onto his finger. I'll keep an eye on it every day, he said quietly. Did I do the right thing? He asked, his voice low. Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom before they change, Grandpa said. Have you ever heard the story of Jonah? Yes, Lionel replied. Didn't he get swallowed by a whale? Something like that, Grandpa said. Jonah refused to follow God's will and ran in the opposite direction. So God sent a giant fish to swallow him. He spent 3 days and nights inside, praying until he repented. When the fish spat him out, Jonah finally did what he had to. I imagine he didn't look or smell too good by then. Maybe your wife needs a similar lesson. The real question is whether you can forgive her, Grandpa added. Can you let go of your hatred? Lionel shook his head. I don't know, he said softly. She tried to eliminate me. I tried, Grandpa replied simply. Lionel took a long pause. All right, he said. Time to go home. We packed up and headed to the ranch. I gave Lionel my address and phone number in case he needed to talk. Grandpa drove him back home. Danny had already fed William and put him to bed. Feeling exhausted, I grabbed a beer and stepped into the backyard for a cigarette. After a while, Danny joined me. "It feels so good to finally be home with you," she said, resting her face against my shoulder. I hugged her tight. "Yeah, it really does. I'm just so thankful you and William are okay. I don't know how I would have managed if I lost either of you." I was scared, but I wasn't worried," she said, taking a drag from my cigarette. "I knew you and Grandpa would save us, and you did." I put out the cigarette and gently cupped her face in my hands. I kissed her deeply. "I love you so much," I told her. "I love you more," she whispered, undoing my shirt buttons. "My husband," she added with a teasing smile, "and I'm going to show you just how much." We were interrupted by a loud cough from behind the door. Alarmed, we both sat up and looked around. "Sorry to interrupt," Grandpa said, smiling. "I just wanted to let you know I got Lionel home safely." "No worries," Danny said. "How's he doing?" I asked. "He's doing all right," Grandpa replied. "He's been through a lot. We had a good conversation. We'll see how it goes." "Do you think he'll ever forgive Cheryl?" I asked. "I don't know," Grandpa said, his voice heavy. "He's angry and he has every right to be. I told him to stay in touch with you and he agreed. But I know you need some time alone, so I'll leave." Before he could go, Danny rushed over and hugged him. "What's this for?" he asked, surprised. "I just wanted to thank you," she said, kissing his cheek. "I love you." "I love you too, Danny," Grandpa said, returning her hug. "Take care of my grandkids. Both of them, okay?" "I will, Grandpa, I promise," she said. "Say hi to Grandma Lizzie for me," she added. "I will," he nodded. "See you later." He tipped his hat and left. Danny returned to my side, and with a playful smile, she asked, "So where are we now?" A few days later, I came across an article online about a failed coup attempt in Chihuahua, Mexico. It mentioned a Colonel Alejandro Rojas, who had liquidated a wealthy businessman trying to raise an army to take over the state. Some of the captured men claimed they had been attacked by demons on horseback, but Rojas dismissed it as delusions caused by pills. The article also noted that illegal tools had been seized from the camp. The authorities were investigating but hadn't named the lawyer involved, though it seemed to be someone from a Southern California-based firm. Rojas was promoted to brigadier general, awarded a medal, and hailed as a national hero. There was no mention of a cavalry charge. Thankfully, Lionel kept in touch. He told me he'd filed a missing persons report for Cheryl, mostly to cover his tracks if he ever divorced her. He'd also started seeing a psychologist. About a year later, he called to say the stone in his ring had started to flicker blue. "We had a daughter, Elizabeth," he told me. I followed Grandpa's advice and pressed the stone. A while after, Grandpa brought a thin, frantic woman to Lionel's house. He said he tried to help her adapt back into society, but she struggled. She barely spoke, refused to wear clothes most of the time, and ate as though each meal might be her last. Lionel had to reteach her basic things, like using the toilet. It took her weeks to even walk properly. He kept her out of pity, not wanting to turn her away until she could survive on her own. I heard from him several times over the next few months, Lionel told me. Then one day he called to say she was gone. "She left?" I asked, concerned. "No," he replied, tears in his voice. "She died." "I thought she was getting better," Lionel continued. "I came home one day and she was in bed. She'd taken sleeping pills." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said quietly. "It's what happens," Lionel said. "Grandpa said she made peace with God before she went. She left behind a manuscript explaining a lot. It's very graphic in parts, and she had over $5 million in an offshore account. I didn't know she had that kind of money. Maybe it was her way of saying sorry." "Wow," I said, stunned. "Would you want me to read her manuscript?" "If you want," Lionel said. "I need to go through it first and fix some things. She spent months on it, but some of her thoughts are hard to follow. It'll take me about 3 weeks." "Take your time," I replied. "Don't rush." "Are you all right?" I asked him. "Yeah, I'm fine," he said. "The past few months have opened old wounds, but I can handle it." "Take care of yourself," I told him. "Stay in touch." "I will." "Thanks again for everything," Lionel said before we hung up. Later, I told Danny what Lionel had said. "That's a shame," she said, "but I'd love to read what she wrote." I agreed, but we both decided to wait the 3 weeks. Looking out into the yard, we saw William riding Grandpa's back like a horse while Elizabeth laughed joyfully. Grandpa was pretending to be a horse, making neighing sounds. It was hard to tell who was enjoying the game more, William or Grandpa. I turned to Danny, a smile on my face, and saw the same look of love in her eyes. I kissed her, feeling a deep sense of happiness, realizing just how fortunate I was.